This week on Art on the Air features Herb Helm, a self-taught watercolor artist whose art journey began in his mid-40s and is now teaching workshops. Next, we feature Indiana Dunes National Park's visual information specialist, Jeff Manuszak, discussing the Artist in Residence program and the current exhibit of past artists at Chesterton Art Center. Our spotlight is on Footlight Players' upcoming production of the musical Oliver.
Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. You're in the know with Esther and Larry. Art on the air today. Stay in the know with Larry and Esther. Art on the air our way. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart.
Welcome. You're listening to Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Radio, 89.1 FM and WVLP 103.1 FM, our weekly program covering the arts and arts events throughout Northwest Indiana and beyond. I'm Larry Breckner of New Perspectives Photography, right alongside here with Esther Golden of The Nest in Michigan City.
Aloha, everyone.
We're your hosts for Art on the Air. Art on the Air is supported by an Indiana Arts Commission Arts Project Grant through South Shore Arts and the National Endowment for the Arts. Art on the Air is heard Friday at 11 a.m. and Monday at 5 p.m. on WVLP 103.1 FM, streaming at wvlp.org, and every Sunday at 7 p.m. on Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM, also streaming live at lakeshorepublicradio.org, and is available on Lakeshore Public Radio's website as a podcast. Our spotlight interviews are also heard Wednesdays on Lakeshore Public Radio. Information about Art on the Air is available on our website, breck.com/AOTA. That includes a complete show archive, spotlight interviews, plus our shows are available on multiple podcast platforms, including NPR One. Please like us on Facebook, Art on the Air, WVLP, for more information about upcoming shows and interviews. We'd like to welcome to Art on the Air Spotlight from the Footlight Players, who are the production of Oliver, opening March 3rd all the way through the 19th. We have Laura Meyer, who's the director of the production, and Tom Lagone, who's playing that character, Mr. Bumble, and they're going to tell us a little bit about the show, where they're at on that. Welcome to Art on the Air Spotlight.
Thank you.
Aloha, welcome.
So, Laura, tell us about the choice of picking Oliver. That's a perennial favorite, at least 3 hit songs that are in the show, but tell us about the casting, the process, and where you're at on that.
Well, first of all, this is my 3rd time directing this show. So I'm kind of an old pro at Oliver. We held auditions, and I found my perfect Oliver like I do every time. He's a little young, though. He's only 8, and I was thinking he looks a little older than that.
Right.
So it's been a little bit of a struggle, but he's doing just fine.
Yeah, it's a tough show for someone that young. I mean, to put in there, there's a lot on their shoulders. So your casting process, when did you start doing that?
Oh, we did that. Actually, we did that the first part of December because of the holidays. I wanted to get it cast before we started rehearsing so we could kind of plan it out. So I cast it the first part of December. We held auditions 2 nights. I had lots of people come out, and I used all of them. We have 36 in the cast, 16 of which are children between the ages of 6 and 18.
This is in the cast. You have like half the Kilborn family.
Yes.
How fun!
And there's a gentleman in the cast also with three of his children are in it too. So it's kind of a family affair, and I like that.
It's very sweet.
Now, you, Tom, are playing a character that's actually sort of the somewhat of the evil character, not the biggest evil character in the show. But tell us a little bit about Mr. Bumble and with that.
Oh, Mr. Bumble runs the workhouse where all the orphan boys are, and he's not a very nice person, but he keeps them in line, and it's kind of a fun part. I've done it once before, about 20 years ago.
Okay.
And I like the songs.
Oh, sure.
Of course, I'm probably in the first 40 minutes of the show, and then I'm in again maybe just for a few minutes here and there. So all my stuff comes right at the beginning.
And, of course, Oliver gets to deliver probably one of the most famous lines from the show. Please, sir, may I have some more?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about your acting background. What are the other shows have you done?
Wow. Started when I was in high school with Brigadoon.
Okay. What'd you play in Brigadoon?
played Tommy.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. And then 50 years later, I played Tommy again at Footlight Theater a couple years ago.
Good.
So that was interesting. The first time I did it, I was probably a little young for the part, and the last time I was probably a little old for the part.
But in theater, it's all about the magic, right? What other productions have you been in?
Been in Guys and Dolls, I think 3 times.
As?
Brigadoon twice.
No, but what did you play in Guys and Dolls?
Once I was Nicely. Once I was one of the gambler, I can't remember his name. And then the third time I was just in the chorus, but
Okay.
it was a big chorus. It was a nice production. And I've done shows at Dunes Summer Theater and at LaPorte Little Theater. Most of the work I've done, though, has been in Michigan City at Footlight. My daughter is in this show. She plays Nancy.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And she and I were in Sound of Music last year. And I was Max and she was Maria.
Oh, okay.
Oh, so special.
And the first time I played Mr. Bumble in Oliver was about 20 years ago, and she was one of the orphans in that show. So
amazing how it comes out. Laura, tell us about, do you have any acting experience, and what is that?
Well, I started at the age of 9.
Okay.
I was in an Our Gang comedy that was filmed in Michigan City way back then. And I joined Footlight Theater in the late 60s, and I've been in and out of Footlight since then for, personal reasons sometimes. But I've done a lot of shows. I played Winifred in Once Upon a Mattress.
Oh, yeah.
Nellie Forbush in South Pacific, but that was quite a few years ago. Although I was 45 the last time I played Winifred. Sometimes you have to just kind of push the envelope.
Sure. Well, and when it comes to acting, you're portraying someone. You don't have to necessarily be that character and everything.
That's right.
And such like that.
Makeup does a lot of good.
Makeup and costuming. You can cover a lot of faults there and everything. So
I know. I would like to know what it's like to play, like you said, Mr. Bumble 20 years ago and then now. I mean, what do you think? What do you think you're bringing to it now that you didn't then?
Even though I was fairly old back when I did that one, a lot more maturity, I think. I think I know the part better now.
Yeah.
And it's a fun part, but like I said, he's not a very nice guy.
no, he isn't.
I'm a firm believer of those are the juicy parts. The ingenues are not as much fun as the characters.
Right, that's true. So, well, we were almost ready to wrap up here, so we want to give you a chance to tell us about when the show is, tickets, availability, all that type of thing.
Well, I do want to say one thing. We've already added a matinee on Saturday afternoon, the 18th of March, 2:00 matinee. That hasn't been advertised yet, but we decided last night the ticket sales are going so well that we added that extra show. So altogether, there'll be 10 performances. Starting on March the 3rd, we do Friday, Saturday, and Sunday afternoon at 2. Friday and Saturday nights at 7:30 for 3 weekends. And then that last weekend, we'll have an extra matinee on Saturday afternoon.
Very good. Well, that's Oliver opening March 3rd, and it's the Footlight Players located on 1705 Franklin Street in Michigan City. You can go online and find out information about that. Laura and Tom, thank you so much for being on Art on the Air Spotlight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thanks
for having us.
Thanks.
Art on the Air Spotlight and the full 1-hour Art on the Air program on Lakeshore Public Radio is brought to you by Macaulay Real Estate in Valparaiso, Olga Patrician, Senior Broker. And as a reminder, if you'd like to have your event on Art on the Air Spotlight or have a longer feature interview, email us at aota@brech.com. That's aota@brech.com. You're listening to Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Radio, 89.1 FM, and on WVLP, 103.1 FM.
We would like to welcome Herb Helm to Art on the Air. Herb started a watercolor practice in his 40s and has shown his watercolor paintings in over 50 art exhibitions and competitions throughout the United States. He is a professor of psychology at Andrews University and has been a member of the Department of Behavioral Sciences since 1992. Thank you, Herb, for joining Larry and I on Art on the Air. Welcome. Aloha.
Well, thank you.
Well, Herb, I always like to start off our show is I want to know a little bit about our guests and everything. I like your origin story. And, of course, you have kind of a unique one where you didn't take up art right away. But we want to hear about everything from where you grew up, all the types of things before we even get to your art. So I always like to say how you got from where you were to where you are now. So tell us about yourself.
First 10 years of my life, I actually grew up in Chesterton, where now I'm doing a few classes for, the Chesterton Art Center. Then when I was 10, we moved up to Berrien Springs, Michigan. And basically I've lived there most of my life. I spent 7 years in the South, in Mississippi and Arkansas. But I grew up around Berrien Springs. Ironically, I lived on the same street that Muhammad Ali lived on. So periodically we'd see him jog by. My dog might chase him. Was able to go down and watch him do a little bit of boxing one time. So, basically have grown up around the lake most of my life. So that's always played a big role in terms of spending a lot of time out there in the summers. I don't know, I went to school mostly at Andrews University, spent a little bit of time in England going to school for a semester, and did my doctorate down in southern Mississippi. So,
yeah.
So when you were so you said you didn't start until, seriously working on your art until your 40s, but during your early education, what was your experiences in your art classes? Did you enjoy it? Did you have many of them?
That part I don't really remember so much of. I don't remember doing a lot of art classes. My mom does do some, or did some oil and watercolor. She would try to get me to do it every once in a while. But I always thought playing outside was much more fun and important. So I would pretty much not get involved with it a whole lot. So it really wasn't until my mid to late 40s that I decided that I would take a shot at it. Yeah.
What did that? What was the spark that did that?
Probably that I was getting, older and my body couldn't play a racquetball as much as it used to. I don't particularly like winters. So I needed to find something to do during that time period. And I would say I always found, probably about watercolor what a lot of people like, the translucency of it. So that's sort of where I started. I also like that I think it's one of the cheaper mediums. In other words, it doesn't dry out, or if it does, I just throw a little bit more water on it and reconstitute it. My first class that I sort of signed up for, I would say that I had a real rah-rah type of teacher. I don't think my work was that good, but she would be going, oh yeah, that's just really nice stuff. And she'd pick something out of it. And so she was very encouraging, but so that probably helped, but I actually enjoyed the medium.
Did you, some of the people you studied with then?
Oh my goodness, that's like throwing at a dartboard. I mean, I've been taking workshops for probably 20 years, and I've done most of the major ones that do workshops, starting out probably earlier with Roland Roycraft. He was an interesting guy because he was near the end of his teaching career, and so I probably got 2 of the last 3 times that he did it. But Paul Jackson, Frank Webb, Carol Carter. I was keeping a list at one time, but sort of ran out. I still do with Terry in Warsaw a little bit, and
what about Dale Popovich? Have you ever taken any of Dale Popovich's classes?
Actually, I have not. I've only sort of met him in that we've both been in some shows together.
Isn't he?
Yeah,
He's amazing.
I actually would like to take one with him. I like his style.
We have to take a trip to the North Woods of Wisconsin to do that because they both moved up there, and we're good friends. And his wife and I went to school together and everything. But they're now all settled in their little cabin in the North Woods, and he teaches workshops all over the place, but especially at Dillman's Resort. That's kind of one of his mainstays up there. And so, yeah. And then, of course, one of the other watercolors locally is Kathy Loss Rathburn. I don't know if you've ever crossed paths with her.
Only in that we've been in the same shows together at times. So, yeah, but I haven't taken anything with her, but I'm well aware of her paintings and who you're talking about.
So do you favor landscapes or urban scenes? What do you like to paint, or all of it?
I would say I'm pretty eclectic in that. It really doesn't matter a lot. If anything, I probably do a little bit less in portrait, but animals, landscape, urban, any of those are fine with me. I'll do portraits every once in a while, but it's probably not one that just jumps out and goes, me next.
Do you have a studio space that you work in, like in your home, or like maybe even at the university there? Or
I have a room in my house that is dedicated to my art stuff, but honestly, it's so packed I can barely walk into it. So frequently when I'm doing art, I will take what I need out of that room and sit in front of the television and, work for... I usually either work based on what program is on and if I got time there, or I used to throw on CDs, and once it had gone through once or twice, then, people would say, how long does it take you to do it? And it's like, I don't know. I just sit down with the CD for a while and work on it. And when that CD's over, I'll work next time. So, but I do have, but it's really crowded in there.
So do you mostly show in watercolor shows, or do you do what? Well, I guess my question more is what informs your choices of where to exhibit?
Probably I use mostly how close it is to me. So probably I run, Elkhart to like Valparaiso, that area up into St. Joe. I have done with both Michigan and Indiana watercolor societies, but they tend to be 3 to 4 hours away from me. So it's either packing stuff up or a longer drive. So that's tended to what dictates it more.
Done arts festivals before, or is it just submitting?
I'm not exactly sure what you mean by festivals. I have done a few solo shows.
Like the Chesterton Art Festival or the Lubeznik Center for the Arts Festival, any of those?
Yeah, I tend not to do the art fair ones. It's more just the gallery stuff. Yeah.
So what made you cross over into teaching? You studied, of course, late in life, but what brought you to doing like workshops and things like that, like you did recently at the Chesterton Art Center? And that's where we met, is not so much doing that, but they came in for the Teacher Appreciation Day. And
I was teaching a class in, I know this is going to be a long way around, but I was teaching a class in statistics and ended up meeting a lady there who had a gallery in Sawyer at the time that was called the Scarlet Macaw. Mm. And so I started to take some stuff down there with her place. And eventually, because I was doing these workshops, the idea arose, why not take some of what I'm learning in those workshops and start teaching there with her stuff. So I started to do that. And eventually Judy at Chesterton Art Center asked me to sort of step in. They used to have Helen Burkett from Florida that would come up and do a number of workshops. And sort of when she phased out, they sort of put me into the time period that she was typically doing it. And then it sort of went from once a year to now where I'm doing it about quarterly.
Tell us about, like, if I was to sign up for your workshop, first of all, the expectation of, like, what your experience level is. I mean, do you have different levels of that? And what can we expect in a workshop over how many days or whatever like that? So describe the workshop experience.
Yeah, I would probably like at least sort of an advanced beginner, but honestly, I will take almost anybody. I've found out that it's almost more important to find somebody who will actually listen to what you're saying and then try to replicate that element if they're trying. A lot of my workshops are more what I call paint-alongs. So I will bring in a topic. We'll typically have a drawing of it. You might do some masking. And then when you get there, I'll demonstrate a certain section, and then you work that section, and we try to get as far as we can through that painting. So it's almost more important having somebody who is really good at sort of listening and following that element. Sometimes you get people that know more, and then they sort of go off on their own tangent, which is fine with me. I really don't mind that. But I think, like when I'm taking a workshop, usually when I'm doing that, I'm doing it because I actually want to learn sort of the style of the person that's doing that. And, I don't know if that was a flaw in my educational aspect, but what I used to do at the beginning was I would find these different people whose styles were very different from each other, and then go take a few days with them. I'm not sure if it would be smarter to find one person and work with them for a while, but the advantage of doing that, I found out, was that people would say, "Hey, you can't do this with watercolor," And then I'd go to another workshop and they'd be going, "Oh yeah, here's how you do this with that," and so it was great because you'd have all these people sort of contradicting what the other one was telling you could or couldn't do in watercolor. So my approach to workshops is actually fairly open in terms of what you're capable of doing with it as a result of that. But I think part of it depends on what you want out of the workshop. If you're there to learn a little bit more about composition and take yours, whatever style you have a little further, that's fine. But generally, I'm probably getting more what I would call advanced beginners, intermediate types of people who are probably trying to work a little bit more on some technique elements. And that's where probably more of the focus is on mine.
Well, Herb, I watched your YouTube video on how you see a painting. And so I'm curious, like for you yourself personally, were you the 1, 2, 3, 4? I mean, did you go exactly where this artist was hoping you would go, or?
Okay, if you don't mind, I'll back up on that a little bit on that question.
Yeah, please give the background on it.
Yeah. First of all, the problem with that YouTube one is that you can't really see the marker that I'm using to show. It's a laser and it doesn't show up well in there. But that said, in taking from different people, they would often talk about composition or other elements. And I would listen to it and I would go, yeah, that sort of makes sense, but how do we really know? And a lot of times when we're talking about how you could take how do artists get people to look where they want, they're often taking dead people and then saying, here's what so-and-so wants you to see in this painting. Well, I thought, first of all, how do you know what a dead person wants? And while some of this matches things like Gestalt, concepts of perception, I thought, why not take a couple of people who are alive, see if they'll tell me where they think people are looking in their paintings, and then actually, ironically, the guy's office who's next to me is a guy who does, or at least in the past, he used to do a fair amount of research and eye tracking. So you don't have to ask people where they're looking. You literally hook them up to the machines. The machine tracks their eyes, tells you where they're at for how long and all of that type of thing. So I got a couple of artists, one being John Salomon. Now, if you're familiar with him, he's like one of the most
tops.
well-known watercolors. I mean, he's won so many awards and
the work is
that
exquisite.
type of thing. And then I got Terry Armstrong, who's over in Warsaw and a fairly well-known artist there who does a lot of different shows and teaching and that type of thing. And so I asked them if I could use some of their paintings, and they let me pick the ones that I wanted out of there, which I chose for various reasons. And then I asked them to pick where people should be looking in their paintings. So once we got them to actually identify it, we then hooked up various subjects and then ran through and created heat maps of where people were looking in the paintings and where they weren't looking in the paintings, and trying to see how well people could actually predict, what other people would do. And so we were able to sort of substantiate some of what I was, hearing. And then we got a couple of interesting things that, maybe wasn't exactly what people think of when they're doing their paintings. So, like an example of that, we know that people are going to look where there's high contrast, right? Well, John Salomon did this painting called Grant Lanterns, which I think was done in San Francisco, and it's got the lanterns above the street and all of this. And well, you would think that people would look at the lanterns, especially since this is named Grant Lanterns, right? Well, we find out that one of the heavy spots that people were actually concentrating on was a little red light set off to the side that's really supposed to be sort of a nondescript part of the painting. But because there's a fairly amount of good contrast over there, people spent much more time actually focusing on that than they did the lanterns.
Not me. The first place I went with that one was the lanterns and spent time there. Where did you, on that one in particular, do you remember where you looked first?
Oh, I didn't actually hook myself up to this, but I actually have the heat map in front of me here. So what I could tell you is two things that John told us actually panned out really well. He said people tend to look at people. And if there's any people in the painting, you'll see that that's true. And the other thing that he told me, because one of the paintings I picked out also was one where it was like a single figure walking down a Chicago street, and there's really not much else there to look at other than the single figure. And the whole idea was, would people focus on that one major thing? And what we found out is they actually focused on two things. One is that the heavy part was the figure, but then they also focused off to the right of the person. It was like, yeah, but there's nothing over there really, except that there's writing. And the other thing that he had mentioned is that people focus on writing. And we found that constantly, and that happened to Grant Lanterns too, is that people more than focusing on the lanterns actually were focusing on writing that was occurring on the buildings around it. And my friend's interpretation is people are trying to figure out what's going on in their environment as part of that. And one of the ways that we do that, and he's a cognitive psychologist, is that we look at our environment. And of course, for humans, we read stuff to help us figure out where we're at.
We do much of the same thing in theater with lighting design. You make people look where the eye is drawn to the brightest spot on stage. And so you can draw, just like what we call the stage picture, you can manipulate that. Of course, that's a fluid thing. But like you were just talking about, you can draw the attention to where you want people to look on stage by having light and blackout at the other parts. So,
yeah, one of the other ones that I found really interesting is that Terry Anderson had done one where Armstrong, not Henderson, where he had done a number of trilliums in a painting. And the irony is that some of the people focused on some trilliums and absolutely ignored others, which I then can't explain because we still have that high contrast there. In other words, why look at it? So I don't know if you get the same thing in theater lighting, but if you have multiple spots, it seemed that was a painting that I'm still struggling on interpreting, because it's like, okay, why'd you pick that trillium over this trillium? And It's not like, it's not like close. It's like one's real heavy in terms of the heat map, and one shows almost nothing on the heat map. So that was an interesting one. It's like, well, how do people make that choice? So,
yeah, and that one for me, it was the shadows more than the flower.
Okay. So you looked at the pictures?
All of them, yes. I thought it was so interesting because that first one, I was like spot on where he wanted me to look. 1, 2, 3, 4, bang. And then the rest of them, it was a little more squishy for me. Like my eye was drawn to different places. Like the one with the winter scene with the road and the big tree. Well, I'm down the road, and then I sort of in my periphery kind of notice the tree. But yeah, I was just like, "Ooh, where does this road go?"
Well, yeah, and one of the things that we assume, and part of this is because we actually took our subjects and put them under two different conditions. One was look at it like you're at a gallery, and the other one was we're going to test you later to see what you remember. And there were actually some differences depending on whether they were under one condition or another. And so one of the other conditions that we've thought of would make a lot of difference is whether or not a person has training in art. Because largely what we were using was undergraduate students who probably had minimal training in art. And the view is, yeah, if we pick somebody who knew something about art and composition and all that, while we would still probably get a lot of the same stuff, we would probably be getting some other variations on that.
Very briefly, with COVID, how did that impact your art creation? You teach at a university, but then I know that probably impacted that. But how did that impact you in terms of your creation? Was it more creative period or less?
It might have been slightly less, but I don't know if you want to call it creative period. Often my creative period comes because I know a show is coming up and I need to get something going if I want to try to get into that one. So once the shows shut down to going online more, I seem to not quite have the same level of interest in terms of putting as much stuff out.
Well, in just wrapping up here, Herb, we want to know, if you have any upcoming workshops. This is going to air about near the end of February, but in the next few months. Also, how people can get in touch with you.
Yeah, I think the next one that I have, and they would probably have to look on the Chesterton Art Center website to be sure. I think I've got one in April, a workshop coming up. It's a one-day one. Probably the best way to get a hold of me would be to use my email, which would be helmh@andrews.edu. And I think you said you have that posted on your site.
Yeah, we'll have it on your picture on our website, so you can just click on the picture and it'll take you there. I would like to thank Herb Helm for coming on Art in the Air, sharing his art journey, and of course starting later in life. And if you want to see him again, he'll be coming up at the Chesterton Art Center soon, and you can take a workshop from Herb. Thank you so much for coming on Art on the Air.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me. So.
And as a reminder, if you'd like to have your event on Art in the Air Spotlight or have a longer feature interview, email us at aota@brech.com. That's aota@brech.com. You're listening to Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Radio, 89.1 FM, and on WVLP, 103.1 FM.
We would like to welcome Jeff Manuszak to Art on the Air. Jeff is the Visual Information Specialist for the Indiana Dunes National Park and the Visual Information Design Graphic Designer for the National Park Service. In that capacity, he co-created the identifying graphic logos for well-known sites in the area. Thank you, Jeff, for joining Larry and I on Art on the Air. Aloha and welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, we enjoy having you. And, how we always start all of our episodes is we always like to know kind of your background story, your origins and where you grew up, where you went to school, elementary all the way through college, some of your other service and how you got there. So I always like to say how you got from where you were to where you are now. So, Jeff, tell us about yourself.
Okay. I grew up I was born in Hammond, Indiana. Grew up in Calumet City, Illinois. Went to Coolidge in elementary school, and then our family migrated to Lansing, Illinois, and went to TF South High School. And from there, I ventured out to the military. I was in college for a bit at Ray College of Design in Chicago, and then I got into the military, got back out, and then found myself back in this area, and we moved to LaPorte, Indiana. So that was just very quick, but that's how I got around.
Jeff, because in that Army experience, it was an there were art-based programs that you were involved in. And so were you painting during that time, because I really, really like those paintings of the military that you do.
Thank you. I was very lucky in that aspect to land a position in the military, which only two people held at a time. It was a combat artist. When I joined the military, I scored pretty good on my my ASVAB test, and they asked me what do you want to be in the military, and I saw the guy sitting across me. He had that nice suit on with the tie, trying to sign me up for my career. I said, that looks pretty good. Let's try that. So I got in as a 71 Lima, which is a administration specialist. And I was on my way to Fort Hood, Texas after my basic training and advanced individual training. And my orders got changed, and I found myself my very first duty station working in the Pentagon for the 4-star general, chief of staff of the Army, General Sullivan. It was very lucky to be there. And so my duties were to, Xerox up papers and get the generals and the colonels ready who were in that department. And a Xerox and a color Xerox was a very high-tech thing back then. I'm really dating myself with this. So I would just set up the conference rooms, get them ready for their conferences. And one day he saw a portrait that I had drawn of my wife, and it was sitting on my desk. And he asked me if I had other art. And I said, heck yes. He goes, can you bring it in? And of course, an artist with a portfolio is proud to show it off. So I brought in my artwork, and he's like, oh my gosh, what are you doing here? We got a position as an Army artist. Do you paint? And so I brought in some more paintings and stuff like that. And next thing you know, I found myself in a studio in Washington, D.C. on 14th and L, working as a combat artist for the Center of Military History. All I did was paint. I was such a blessing. Just what a lucky coincidence there.
I know. I came a breath away from joining the Air Force. Had I known that there was an art possibility component to it, my life would be very different now.
Yeah.
So Jeff, earlier in your life, did you have any, what was your experience like art in like elementary, middle school, all that through that type of thing? I'd say I could remember coloring and just spending my days and drawing, just getting lost in it. It was a joy to do it. Maybe 3rd, 4th grade. I just remember just spending time drawing and learning how to shade. The first instance I can remember of actually doing anything with it, we had an assignment in art class to draw Abraham Lincoln, and like 3 months later, it turns out that the teacher enrolled these into a art competition, and I won a little watercolor set, and that's when I was like, oh wow, I might be good at art, So I just I've always enjoyed it. It passed the time. I'd never thought I'd grow into actually make a living as an artist at some point. It just, the cards fell where they were. And I'm just very fortunate to, go through that and get that job.
Anybody in the family involved in the arts?
My mom is, she was always very crafty, but I've got to say my daughter, Alexis Manuszak, she runs circles around me in everything she does. She could just look at it and draw it or paint it. And it's, that she is very gifted in that aspect.
So we'll get back to the Army, and you're you moved from the Pentagon to the art studio. So how long did you serve there? And we've seen some of the work that you've done, but then what happens after that? Okay,
so in the I was in the Army from 92 to 2001, and So I'm working as a combat artist in the studio, and the general goes, "Hey, you should be working in the career field that's closest to um, art, and which is a multimedia illustrator for the military." And we looked at the opportunities; they were full. And he goes, "No, they're not. We're going to get you in." So the next thing you know, I was into the Defense Information School, getting retrained to be a multimedia designer for the military. And at this point, I've already had my degree from Ray College of Design. And the sergeant major saw me going through as the sergeant major of the school there. And he goes, "When they're done with you over there, you're going to come back here and teach graphic design for the military." So as a student, I was already picked for my next assignment. And that was a wonderful opportunity again. So when I got finished with the combat art, they ran me through the instructor training course. They taught me how to be a teacher and develop curriculum. And I spent the next couple of years, 4 years, teaching graphic design for the military. And then once I had to make a decision to stay in the military or get out, because I was there for 9 years, 4 months, and I started raising my family, and the kids were starting to grow up and realizing we're moving. So I decided to get out and get back to LaPorte, and I got out, and I used to teach at Illinois Institute of Art, a couple courses there, and then I taught at Westwood College, which was a trade school, basically teaching software like Adobe, the design software, Adobe,
Right.
Photoshop, Illustrator, Premiere. And then believe it or not, my combat artist buddy goes, "Hey, Jeff, you live near the dunes, don't you?" I said, "Yeah, I'm pretty close to the dunes." He goes, "There's a government job as a visual information specialist. You ought to check it out." I'm like, ah. So I go there and I look at the resume to look at, the USAjobs.gov, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so long to fill this thing out, all the paperwork. Well, I filled it out and I just totally forgot about it. Like 3 months later, I get a call, and it's the chief of interpretation giving me a call and running me through the 2-hour interview process. And next thing you know, I was at the dunes working as a visual information specialist, doing their graphic design and their publications and website and social media.
So why don't you expand on exactly what you do as that? I know having trouble hooking up with you because you're out there so busy and doing things, but give us a broader view of, what your day looks like doing that.
Anything that you see at the dunes, like if you walk up to a sign at Indiana Dunes National Park, chances are that we've created it. There's 2 of us designers. There's Wesley Butler, who is a great designer as well. We would take the photos of of what we needed on the images. So we do photography. We would draw out the trail maps. We would do the layout for it, and we'd put all the graphics together. So if you arrive at a site at Indiana Dunes National Park and you're reading about the trail or you're reading about the park on those big waysides, it came out of our shop. We also handle all the graphics for like the publications, a lot of the trinkets sold at the store, like the logos and things like that, are generated out of our office. We do the Singing Sands newspaper, which is the Indiana Dunes National Park guide. So we lay that entire thing out. I'd say 70% of the photographs were taken by us and put in there, and all the graphics for that. We've done things from designing the side of our little shuttle buses. We do our videos. We run the on-cell program where you can dial a number and listen to somebody talk, the narrations. We also contribute to our National Park Service Indiana Dunes app. So we
Right.
feed that with graphics and photos and things like that. So very blessed again, very versatile, jack of all trades, you know, and it's a great opportunity.
So, Jeff, can you give us some background on the Artist in Residency program, and were you involved in starting that?
I was not involved in starting it. The Artist in Residence program is where artists are invited to come to a national park, and they can stay, you know, at differences throughout the national parks, which ones are doing it. But they can stay from like a week to a month, and they're provided. Some are provided housing, but they just stay inside of the dunes and they are inside of the park and they paint. And it's a way for them to show the inspiration of the scenic vistas that the park has. It's the way to preserve what the park, the scenic views that the park had. It's a way for the artists to use art to educate visitors of what's in the park. So it's basically an exchange of time for art. And some artist in residence programs don't even require that you leave a piece of art behind. They're just there to support the inspiration that the parks, the inspiration and effects that the parks have on people and places.
You're listening to Art on the Air on Lakeshore Public Radio, 89.1 FM, and on WVLP, 103.1 FM. You recently had an exhibit at the Chesterton Art Center, which is still going to be running when this interview runs. So tell us a little bit about that process of selecting it. I think those were a wide variety of artists, and you know how I think you may have been involved in the curating of it. Tell us about that exhibit.
The exhibit is at the Chesterton Art Center in Chesterton, Indiana. It is a sense of place. And I wanted some place to bring the art beyond our visitor center. So I stopped in at the art center there, and I met Hannah, and she thought it was a great idea to get together and have an exhibit. And we started talking, and she showed her the collection and all the people and gave her a little history and background. And she selected some pieces that would fill the show. And I believe we have 33 or 34 pieces there. A majority of that is from the last 3 years of the Artist in Residence program. We had about 16 artists in the last 3 years. Skipping COVID, of course, we had to shut down the program for COVID, but we wanted to exhibit their art in one place as well, kind of like an unveiling, since they were in my office and other places that the public don't get to see it. So
that exhibit runs through March
1st.
March 1st. So we can still, if you get into Chesterton Art Center, you can still see that. And you had a great opening day. I was there for the exhibit opening, and that's something. Well, that brings us to the next question is, artists also listen to this program and art enthusiasts. Tell us a little bit about how they might become, I think you're opening up the 2023 Artist in Residence application process. Tell us a little bit about that process and how that goes.
So we do a call for entry, and we post it on our Facebook page. So if you just search Indiana Dunes National Park on the Facebook page, you'll pop up and you'll see a call for entries, and if you click that button, it'll lead you to our webpage. And on there, you'll find the application. We are running, we have the call for entries open until March 1st postmarked, or we have to receive the application by March 8th of 2023.
How long is the residency?
That's normally it's 2 weeks, and we offer a housing in the park. There might be a greater need for the housing at the time, and we might have to shorten the residency to 1 week and offer a hotel stay in a nearby hotel instead. So it's it's at the needs of the park, but thankfully we have a leadership at the park that really wants to support the program. So there will definitely be a residency. We just don't know what the allocated space and needs are going to be at this time. On the application, we have it could either be a 2-week or a 1-week, and once we figure out the needs for the park, we'll be able to best determine that.
What type of artists are you looking for? I mean, you said painters, but I know it goes broader than that. So tell us about.
Oh yes.
Some writing. Can you be a poet or
Yes. One of our goals right now, though, is we are leaning more towards the painters and the visual arts, because we'd love to create a coffee table book with the arts that were created during the residency. Currently, we have about 84 artworks, and our goal is to get to 100 and create that coffee table book that that we can share with the visitors, and maybe we can have a partner sell the book or something like make postcards or posters out of them, and be a nice fundraiser for the national parks.
Right. Do you have like events like for plein air artists like to come in the park and I don't know if that's a formal thing or maybe they just show up and do a plein air event?
Oh yes, we have different groups that frequent the parks. They call them paint outs, and they come in, and it's the very essence of what the artist in residency program is supporting, and why we have it is it's a better connection with the community. And now we have people returning to the parks, and they're getting in groups, and it's great to see it. And if you're walking around on a summer day, chances are you're going to bump into somebody taking a photo, with a camera, a photographer or someone painting or just jotting down in a journal, all aspects of art.
Has the fee thing complicated maybe access to some of the people that they used to show up to a lot of these places for free, and it's mostly a parking thing, but is that complicated the access at all?
Our numbers are still the same. I don't think it's really impacted it. We are a confusing park because there's Indiana Dunes National Park, there's Indiana Dunes State Park, which are right next to each other. So I think people get confused in that aspect. The fee process for the national park is getting easier. There's a learning curve for the staff as well, but I think it's pretty simple to purchase a pass. And
right. Well, and guys like me have their senior pass, so I just actually I stick a copy of it in the window. So
yes.
Are you still personally painting?
No, but it's on my list, and I love the best part of my job is working with the artists and residents that come here, because I kind of live through their creations. I give them a tour on the first or second day that they're here, and we just talk all things art, and we talk about the beautiful. I show them the different places that other people might not know of for views. Once I figure out what they want to paint, I kind of lead them in that direction, show them the hot spots or the places. But I will. I find my creativity through the graphic design things that I create for the park.
Well, maybe you could share with the audience without showing us, because it's a radio show, where are some of the hot spots that are often missed in the park?
Oh gosh. Cole's Bog. It's a pretty popular trail. Miller Woods, that park. And if you walked it once, try to do it once in different seasons. You got to do it 4 different times, and just really the personality of the loops and the trails take on a different aspect altogether with the lighting and the
right
backdrop.
That sounds like a great project that could be an artist in residence that maybe not their specific time they're there, but actually document the 4 seasons of some aspect of it. And I know I'm working on the tropical house. I've got like 3 of the seasons down and almost 4 of them where I've shot it in different things and every aspect of that. And that's great. Well, we're just about a minute and a half left here. So tell us a little bit more about how they can get in touch with you and also about the program. And just kind of tell us more about that.
Sure. The Artists in Residence program falls underneath the volunteer program, so it's a bit tricky to find on our website. If you go to Indiana Dunes National Park website, nps.gov/INDU, you would navigate underneath the work with the park. Then you go to the volunteer, and you'll see the artist in residence program right there. So you'll see all the application opportunities. You'll see the past artist work there. You'll see the whole gallery. That's how you can get in touch with the artist in residence program if you'd like to.
And they can also probably give you a call or email you. I think that's available on the website. And I think if you just do a Google search, that will come up too, like just artist in residence at the dunes.
Correct. Or just call the National Park Visitor Center and ask for Jeff Manuszak, and they'll give you all the information you'll need to get in touch with me. So.
Well, we appreciate you taking time to share this on Art in the Air. The exhibit was great at Chesterton Art Center. I really enjoyed seeing that. And being a photographer and having shot a lot of the dunes area, it's been a great inspiration. Jeff, thank you so much for coming on air. That's Jeff Manuszak, who is the visual arts from Indiana Dunes National Park. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us and telling us about your background and about the parks.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you.
We'd like to thank our guest this week on Art on the Air, our weekly program covering the arts and arts events throughout Northwest Indiana and beyond. Art on the Air is heard Friday at 11 a.m. and Monday at 5 p.m. on WVLP 103.1 FM, streaming live at wvlp.org, and every Sunday at 7 p.m. on Lakeshore Public Radio 89.1 FM, also streaming live at lakeshorepublicradio.org, and is available on Lakeshore Public Radio's website as a podcast. Our Spotlight interviews are also heard every Wednesday on Lakeshore Public Radio. Thanks to Tom Maloney, Vice President of Radio Operations for Lakeshore Public Radio, and Greg Kovach, WVLP's station manager. Our theme music is by Billy Foster with a vocal by Renee Foster. Art in the Air is supported by an Indiana Arts Commission Arts Project Grant through South Shore Arts and the National Endowment for the Arts. We'd like to thank our current underwriters for Art in the Air on Lakeshore Public Radio, Macaulay Real Estate in Valparaiso, Olga Patrician, Senior Broker, and for WVLP, Walt Breidinger of Paragon Investments. So we may continue to bring you Art on the Air. We rely on you, our listeners and underwriters, for ongoing financial support. If you're looking to support Art on the Air, we have information on our website at breck.com/AOTA, where you can find out how to become a supporter or underwriter of our program in whatever amount you are able. And like I say every week, don't give till it hurts. Give till it feels good. You'll feel so good about supporting Art on the Air. If you're interested in being a guest or sending us information about your arts-related event or exhibit, please email us at aota@breck.com. That's aota@breck.com, or contact us through our Facebook page. Your hosts were Larry Breckner and Esther Golden, and we invite you back next week for another episode of Art on the Air.
Aloha, everyone. Have a splendid week.
Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. You're in the know with Esther and Larry. Art on the Air today. Stay in the know with Larry and Esther. Art on the Air our way. Express yourself through art and show the world your heart. Express yourself through art and show the world